I'm Alex.
And I'm Shane.
And this is Race Per Minute.
Hello and welcome back to Race Per Minute. And today we conclude our F1 2022 launch reaction series. It feels a little bit weird doing this post pre-season shakedown, given that we've seen all the cars on track, but not the Alfa Romeo, which I have to say ran quite a lovely camo livery for the 3 days during the shakedown. I'm a massive fan of those camo liveries, and I wish a lot of teams would run them during the testing, just because I think it's a little bit different. But anyway, that aside, today we welcome the Alfa Romeo C42, and in this podcast you can expect us to talk about the launch, any technical information or anything we've spotted on the car which might resemble other teams and how they've gone down that route and what that means obviously after pre-season testing, because obviously we've seen 3 days of testing now and what teams have done slightly better than others. And then we'll talk about that all-important livery and how it stacks up to previous liveries of the Alfa Romeo. So without further ado, Alex, what did you think of the launch?
Well, the launch of the C42 was, as expected, a bit understated compared to the previous seasons where they had a bit more of a almost operatic, theatrical kind of launch that was going on there. This was a bit simpler. And of course, the team is now called Alfa Romeo F1 Team Orlen, which is with their sort of title sponsor. Unusual ordering of it to have the sponsor after the name F1 team. But anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter. That's the way they're doing it. Also, the 2020 car was the C39, and then the 2021 car was the C41, because the C40 was going to be the car for the new regulations.
Which
got postponed. So now that the new regulations are finally here, the car is the C42. So
do you think
hope that clears that up?
That somewhere in a factory far, far away, there is the shell of what could have been the C40?
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah. It'll be discovered in 40 or 50 years' time and posted on Reddit as a sort of relic of, wow, and somebody's discovered this in like their shed or something,
Yeah, it's worth millions. Well, maybe not, but...
Well, maybe if Alfa Romeo accidentally become world champions, but...
there may be.
You never know. But we're up bright and early on Sunday morning here in the UK to see this livery reveal video and a press conference that they did as well. So it was all fairly simple. The livery video, not too much to say there, fairly standard, sort of exciting music, quick cuts, and then just sort of zooming around the car, not really sort of themed in the way that some of them were, like the Williams, which had the sort of tools slowly going towards it and talking about their history. They pretty much got straight to it at Alfa Romeo, so fair enough. And then that was followed by a press conference hosted by Tom Clarkson, who normally does a lot of the sort of standard Formula One press conferences and also hosts the Beyond the Grid podcast. And he seemed to have very, very carefully picked the least interesting questions possible.
Good.
There was lots of, how special is it to see the car and how excited are you for the new season? I told you they were going to say that. There's lots of, how much do you like the new livery? How proud are you of the car? Just kind of, just sort of nothing questions really. But we did get some good stuff from some of the journalists who were asking questions as well. It was very much like a traditional press conference like they would before a race weekend, but it was just Alfa Romeo. So we did glean a few extra things from the press conference. It was sort of mostly, I mean, I told you before this episode that you could probably, you hadn't seen it yet, and I was like, you could probably just skip it, and like you're not going to miss much at all, to be honest with you. The only vaguely amusing thing was that at one point during the press conference, Zhou Guanyu stood up, picked up his helmet, sat on the table in front of them, and just walked off. Just randomly walked off. Apparently it was because they had a busy filming day, but they didn't say that until a bit later. So it looked like somebody asked a question. It looked like he just stood up and walked off.
Amazing.
So that was a bit weird. And I do emphasize that it is, and I see F1 have adopted this as well, to say Zhou Guanyu rather than Guanyu Zhou. Because of course, in China, the names are the other way round. It's like the family name first, isn't it? So F1, and I guess, it's fair enough to sort of say it the way that it should be said in that way, I guess. So yeah, Zhou Guanyu is what we're saying. We're sticking with the sort of Chinese styling. And we also heard from Yan Monchot, who's their technical director. he did confirm that the bouncing of the cars, this sort of porpoising as people are calling it,
Yep.
was unexpected. It hadn't been on any of their simulations. And
I think
possibly
that's the same for every team.
that was probably the same for most of the teams, yeah. And also that it did cause technical issues, at least on the first day of testing. So it wasn't just a sort of unwanted side effect that maybe caused safety issues for the drivers or whatever. It was also potentially damaging suspension, damaging floors, that sort of thing. So it was definitely an issue that goes beyond mere inconvenience or loss of performance, you know. And that was about it for the press conference. Yeah, it wasn't super interesting. Didn't learn a whole lot really from it. But then again, it's just a sort of straightforward press conference. I guess they're just going through the motions and making sure it's announced, more or less. So not too much to say about that. So Shane, we've already seen the car on track, of course, in the aforementioned camo livery. Now, it's a little bit harder to make it out when it had the livery. It did obscure a few things, as you'd expect. But just on the technical side, what do you make of the design of this car, and anything particularly stick out to you?
Well, whilst you've been talking, I've also been looking at the camo livery right next to this rendered photo we have here. And they're very similar. What you can see is obviously the side pods are quite tucked in, very similar to the Red Bull concept. So what I think we're seeing here is actually pretty much what they've been running the last couple of days, because why would they try and hide it? Because obviously there's been loads of photographs taken of it, of every single angle imaginable. So I think this is this resembles pretty well what the car they've been running, and it's got some interesting designs on it as well. It's taken bits and bobs from other cars. More interestingly, if you look towards the front of the car along the nose, it dips down quite a lot. It's got that. It's quite a slope, isn't it?
It's a noticeable sort of bump.
Yes, which we've not seen in any other team so far. That was one of the things that stuck out, which I hadn't seen before. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, it is unusual. We do expect to see a sort of gradual slope down towards the front of the wing to the nose. So I'm not really sure what the aero implications of that are. Maybe it's to try and push air more over the top of the sort of center structure of the car, something like that. I'm not quite sure, but it's an unusual addition, and it's interesting that we don't seem to have seen it on any other car. So something going on there. They also have a very pointed nose at the front.
Yes, they do.
Certainly, I can only really think of the Alfa Tauri being quite that pointed. And yeah, like you say, the side pod design is kind of a less extreme version of the Red Bull one. So it has this undercut, and they're kind of tucked in like that. Also with very large intakes, similar in shape to the Ferrari, which makes sense, of course, because they're running with a Ferrari power unit.
It's also got the what everyone's calling the gills as well on top.
Yes,
now the Red Bull have got these slim, like very cut back side pods, but they don't have these vents on the top, do they? Or
they
don't
did
have
reveal them during the testing. I think they had it covered up, and then they did some runs, and I think on day 2 they took them off. It might have been day 1, I'm not sure, but they definitely took those covers off and revealed the gills. I don't know if they're sticking with them on or off, but they did reveal them at one point.
Okay, so this design is quite similar to the Red Bull concept then, which is interesting because you've got a team here which takes a lot of it takes its engine from Ferrari and shares a lot of its concepts with the Ferrari team, but yet they've clearly gone down their own aerodynamic route, because the side pod is completely different to the Ferraris, the Mercedes, the McLarens. It's very Red Bull-esque.
It's certainly, you get the impression that Alfa Romeo is less similar in its car to Ferrari than, say, Alfa Tauri is to Red Bull, perhaps. Or maybe I guess they're kind of similar, but I was just thinking that obviously they share the power unit, but I think that with Sauber being sort of at one point a sort of very separate team, and then being established by Alfa Romeo and having a relationship with Ferrari with both their driver academy and I'm not sure if they use their gearboxes or their rear suspension. I couldn't quite ascertain that one, but maybe the relationship is more similar than I think it is. But it's interesting that the car itself is certainly quite different to the Ferrari, which has a very distinct design, and this is very different, but is running the same engine, and you'd assume the same gearbox. I mean, that would make sense for you to do that, seeing as the two are designed to run together. But I'm not sure. Maybe Sauber do their own in that regard. But it does have a very similar flaw to the Red Bull as well. It seems to sort of cut out a lot more with those. Seems to jut out a lot more when you see from the top of the car, especially. So yeah, interesting design. Maybe it will be Red Bull-esque in performance. We just don't know. It would be nice to see the team make a bit of progress. And they had a few teething problems in testing, didn't they? They had the second fewest number of laps, I believe.
Yeah.
Second only to Haas. And it wasn't really an encouraging start for a team that's been languishing near the back of the grid for a bit too long now. And, the last time this team saw consistent competitiveness, I suppose, is going to be when they were BMW Sauber with Nick Heidfeld and Robert Kubica, of course. So it feels like it's been a while. There were moments where they were occasionally doing a little bit of giant killing in the sort of early 2010s. They had a few moments there. But yeah, it has been a while since this team really saw them sort of punching a bit further up the midfield. So it's not a super encouraging start.
But it was only the shakedown. And I guess the whole session was called a shakedown because they were expecting a lot of teams to have teething problems with the new regulations and the new set of rules and the new cars. So maybe they've done all right, but other teams have just done a lot better. And I think we'll be able to get a much comprehensive look at things in the actual preseason test in Bahrain in a couple of weeks' time. And if they get to Bahrain and they achieve the same amount of laps or less, then we know there's clearly some fundamental issues when other teams are completed 300-400 laps. And you only expect those teams to do better because if they've done 300-400 laps in the shakedown, you expect them to become more reliable and push more laps in the official preseason test. So hopefully, fingers crossed, moving forward into the actual test, they get a load more laps done.
Well, during the press conference, the tone of their attitude towards the car that as they'd been driving it so far, partially I assume by design, because obviously there's only so much you want to say about your car's performance, but also, and there's only so much you can say because until you start racing people. But also because I guess when your drivers are a complete rookie and Valtteri Bottas, you're not going to have sort of super high energy, emotional going on about the performance of the car. But they were pretty understated. It was all sort of there's potential there kind of thing. That was about as far as they went to talk up the car.
Yeah.
So who knows? We might be surprised. Their occasional technical issues, reliability issues may hide an interesting performance package. Looking forward to find out. Right, let's talk about this livery then. What do you think of the C42, Shane, and in comparison to previous years Alfa Romeos of this variety that they've adopted in the last few seasons?
Well, when I first saw the livery, I thought, looks pretty nice, looks pretty similar to last year. And then I thought, how different is it to last year? So I pinged up the old C41, and it is actually quite different in comparison. I think they've almost switched the colours completely, whereas last year they had red at the bottom of the car and white at the top. Now they've got red at the rear, white in the middle, and then a red nose. Is it red? It's like a deep, very deep, rich red, isn't it? And
it's almost like a wine, isn't it? Like a light wine.
Yes, and I think
hopefully not the sound the car makes.
yeah, you're not wrong. But I do like it. It works really well with the white. You've got the white numbers on the car as well. I'm looking at the 77, the white Alfa Romeo branding. It does look very tidy and very neat. Particularly like the wheel covers. You've got the red and white there. The only thing which sticks out for me a little bit out of place is it works on the rear wing. We've got that. Is it Orlin? What's the Orlin? Yeah, it works well because it's the red and the white. But it looks almost orange on the side pod against the white. Can you see that in the photos you're looking at? I'm just looking at the ones on Twitter. But yeah, it is orange on the side pod and on the end of the ring, on the end of the wings as well. So for me,
I don't think I would describe that as orange. Are you talking about the ones that we retweeted on our account? Are you talking about those photos?
Yeah, that's definitely orange.
Yeah, I'm not seeing orange there. But yeah, I'm not. I gotta say, I'm not seeing that. But
maybe my screen's just calibrated wrong. But I thought
you got
that
flux
was
on
orange.
too early on in the morning, have you?
Yeah, well, I need it. Oh, actually, I tell you what, I've just watched a video back on the actual Alfa Romeo Twitter account, and it's not the same red, but it's slightly less of a red than the actual.
Okay, you're
branding
talking
itself.
about
So take it back.
on the side pods.
On the side pod, yeah.
That says where it says Orlan.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. I guess, yeah, it is a subtly different shade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it may be something of an optical illusion. I still don't think I would describe it as orange, but I do see what you mean. Like, it is a subtly
Maybe
different
that's just my eyes.
shade, yeah.
But all in all, I think it's a pretty nice livery, especially at the rear as well. You've got the Italian flag, the colours on the behind the rear wing.
It's I really like this livery. I think it's lovely. It is slightly reminiscent of Alfa Romeo in the sort of late 70s, early 80s when they were sponsored by Marlboro. So it's got a similar kind of a different shade of red, obviously, but a similar patterning. Best job so far with the wheel covers. They look fabulous. I wish teams did more with the wheel covers. I'm a bit disappointed that they introduced this new thing, and it's an opportunity for, from their perspective, you'd think for branding and colouring and, you know, making it pop. And I don't know, a lot of the wheel covers have been a bit disappointing, and this is the first team to actually put their team colours really on it quite prominently with these nice sort of slats like a fan or something. It looks great. I really like it.
Yeah.
Nice Italian flag on the rear wing, like you mentioned, and a Swiss flag on the edge of the rear floor as well, of course, for Sauber. So, yeah, it's a very smart looking car. And let me get the big one back up again here on my screen. Here we are. And I think that the working of the sponsors and everything is very nice. It's very tidy, doesn't look too busy. And it's kind of a continuation, I suppose, of what they had from last year. I think I do rather miss that large logo on the engine cover. I think I prefer the actual logo Alfa Romeo rather than just the lettering.
Yes. Yeah, I do.
I think I wish that they'd done that, but just with inverse and had the white logo on red instead of the opposite way around that it was last year. But it's still very smart, and they have had some really, really good looking cars in the last few years, Alfa Romeo. Yeah, would be nice if they were as fast as they looked, but we'll find out soon enough, I suppose. But yeah, definitely top half of the grid livery wise. That much is certain. There it is then, the C42. Do send us your thoughts or questions to us at RacePerMinute on Twitter, and get in touch with us at RacePerMinute.com. Comment below if you're on YouTube. We already had a few people getting in touch in the comments. Thanks very much for that. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can give us a rating or a like, whatever it is that you're listening or watching. And if you like what we do, then don't forget to subscribe on your app or on YouTube and get every episode straight to wherever you are. And if you really want to support the show, you can help us keep the quality content coming, receive some lovely rewards, and donate as little as £1 a month at patreon.com/RacePerMinute. Okay, that's the housekeeping out the way, Shane. We've made it to the end. We've done all these launch reactions. We've done one of them after the first bout of testing, which is a bit weird, but
very strange.
We have got to the end of all of these, and I still enjoy doing these launch reactions. I think I find all the Formula One launches quite entertaining. It's just unfortunate that for every Alpha Tauri who release this sort of wonderfully weird launch video and just sort of don't care for relatability and just doing their own thing and releasing a cool looking car, it gives you something to talk about. For every release like that, there's one that's a bit more sort of like Alfa Romeo, which large, perhaps for practical reasons or whatever, is just lacking a bit of character and is just a bit, especially when it's near the end of a long run of launch reactions, it's a bit like we've seen all this before. It's the same questions, it's the same comments, and really the conversation largely just becomes about the design and the car itself, which is fine, but I like talking about the launches because they can be delightfully silly sometimes.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that'll be it for us for a couple of weeks, unless any breaking news comes out and we do a quick RPM roundup. But probably the next podcast we'll be doing will be post official preseason testing, where where Sky are covering it live, and we'll have live data and live timings and actual footage of cars going around track, not just provided by the Formula One social media account, which I'm looking forward to. It'll be good to see. I just can't wait to have a look at some proper highlights and see some cars go around on the track, and then hopefully we get to see a better idea. Well, we're not going to be able to know what the pecking order is going into the new season, but Hopefully we'll see some faster times and some more representative cars, because I'm sure there'll be a couple of new designs coming out, new front wings, new rear wings, altered floors. It's all going to be chop and change towards the start of the season. It's exciting times. It's still anybody's game. There's a couple of really good cars out there looking quite strong, and then there's a couple which need to do a little bit more work to stick in the midfield. It's exciting times.
I understand that there's practical reasons involved, but I do still wish that they would test at circuits that are not on the calendar.
Yes,
you just get to go to these 2 circuits and get a load of data for those races in a lot of ways. So,
well, Bahrain is the first race, isn't it?
They test there and then they race there, and
it's a real shame that or just do the outer ring, just do a different configuration. Bahrain has many circuit designs. A couple of them have that. Is it the A1 license required, or there's a specific license required to race Formula One cars around? And we know there's at least 2 because we've raced there twice in to 2 different circuit layouts in the last couple of years. So use the overall layout for pre-season testing, and then actually have the race on a different layout, the traditional Grand Prix layout. That would be good, because then the teams are basically going to know where they're going to finish or how long it's going to take to finish the race by the time they finish pre-season testing.
Maybe not quite that far, but we just run in the future. We just run a simulation for the race. We just load up the F1 game and just do a sort of.
That's what you'll do for Monaco, isn't it?
It's all just simulated. We can simulate so closely we don't even need to race. But notwithstanding some kind of breaking news or something like that, we will see you again very soon for the Bahrain testing. Thank you very much for joining us for everything so far. This month has been the best month for Race Per Minute in the 18 months, nearly 2 years we've been doing it, in terms of like downloads and engagement and all the rest of it. So that's been amazing, and it's really exciting for us, and it's just that much better when there's people to bounce off and talk with, and
we love the interaction. Really love the interaction.
We just want to create a conversation and sort of talk to like-minded people and build a little community. So thanks very much for everything so far, and we'll see you again soon in Bahrain.